Hello, and welcome to this course on life balance. Today I'm going to be talking about a few different perspectives on the major factors of wellness. These perspectives are not contradictory, but rather complementary. Not any one of these perspectives captures the whole subject. This presentation will also go into what will be covered later in the course and the expectations that there will be for the course, including the final project. The first perspective that I wanted to give to you is something that comes from the psychologist Abraham Maslow. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, Maslow saw needs that people have as being in a pyramid with the basic physiological needs at the bottom, then psychological needs in the middle, and then self-actualization and fulfillment needs at the top. So the physiological needs are things like food, water, warmth, and rest. Safety needs are things like security and shelter. Then under psychological needs, the need for belongingness and love, such as intimate relationships and friends. Esteem needs are prestige and feeling of accomplishment. Then at the top, he initially had self-actualization, which was a very individualistic goal of achieving one's potential, including creativity. But later in life, Maslow recognized, as we as Christians would recognize as well, that self-transcendence is above that, that ultimately we find our deepest fulfillment when we're serving others and serving God. So I wanted to start with this perspective because it comes from psychology, it comes from a long psychological tradition, and then I've taken this perspective and I've revised this to follow an acronym I call the 3 R's. At the bottom is restoration, where things like therapy, exercise, medication, diet, nutritional supplements, and sleep are all components to help make sure that our physiological needs are being met. Then the middle area, responsibility, is the world of relationships. These relationships can be externally in vocation, in our work, our church, our school, and our community, and also the more close personal relationships of our family and the relationship to ourselves. But above these two areas is the area that would correspond to Maslow's self-fulfillment, self-actualization, and self-transcendence, which I call recreation. This is not the same thing as recreation because it's actually taking what we are given as people and transforming it into something new. This can be through socialization, this can be through creativity, and ultimately it's through spirituality. Another perspective that I wanted to present to you that doesn't rank areas of life harmony in a hierarchy is that of the SelfCare Wheel. I won't go into all the different components of self-care in detail that the author Olga Phoenix presents here, but I just wanted to highlight this because she talks about these same basic dimensions that we talked about earlier, like, for example, the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological, and the physical. Then the professional would correspond to vocation, and the personal basically corresponds to self-actualization. But then she goes into each one of these and provides different strategies to help with each of these areas. Another concept that comes from Ken Wilber's philosophy is that of integral psychology. I won't go into all the details about this now, but basically, integral psychology says that the world is divided into fundamentally 4 categories: the interior individual, which is the world of the I; the exterior individual, which is the world of it; the interior group, which is the world of we; and the exterior group, which is the world of its. Um, Basically, as you can see by these words in each of these categories, there's a contrast where the interior individual is essentially a subjective world of the inner self, um, and that's where meaning is found for an individual, whereas the external um, individual is basically the world of science and objectivity. Um, and then the interior group is where meaning is found for the group through culture and worldview, and found in politics. The exterior group is looking at social systems from the outside, looking at economics from the outside, and looking at ecological systems from the outside. So these are 4 different perspectives on reality, and they have to be in balance in order for our understanding of the world to be in balance. These dimensions then can be applied to the question of life harmony, to self-care, to resilience and recovery. So as you see over here in the world of the I, there's things that can be done personally, like mindfulness and focal practices. Focal practices being things that center your mind on something real, something that's in the world. So I'm saying that's personal. That would correspond to the coping skills wheel section called personal. And the psychological, such as individual therapy; the spiritual, prayer and other spiritual practices; media nutrition, being careful of what you watch and take in the media. That's something that we'll be talking about later in the course. And the 12 steps. Then over in the world of it's fundamentally the physiological needs of the individual that were talked about earlier when we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So again, things like sleep, diet and supplements, medication, exercise, body work, and group therapy. Then over in the world of the we, it's about situating the individual in his or her context socially, family therapy, friendship with others, community, society, church, and psychoeducation to make the individual aware of his or her condition better and how to cope with it. Then finally, in the world of its is vocational training, residential treatment, aftercare support, educational support, financial planning and support, and health insurance and other community services. So fundamentally, just any of those external supports that can be put in place for a person that are not as personal as the ones on the left-hand side here on the bottom. So I hope that this is a helpful framework to think about all the different avenues through which one can gain life balance. So after showing these different perspectives, I want to go over briefly the outcomes for this course, because this will show where we're going to be going. First of these is to understand bipolar disorder and dual diagnosis as systems disorders. In other words, as something that obviously has a biological, organic component, but that it involves the whole person spiritually, and socially, and in all the other dimensions of life. And out of that understanding, then to describe the factors that have contributed to one's own condition. And then after that, to know how to correct and determine how to have the best self-care to have a balanced life and have resilience in the face of mental illness. We'll also be working to track status in each of these major areas that we've talked about earlier in this presentation, set measurable and achievable goals in each area, develop a plan for accountability, and finally to explain how to pass this knowledge on to others. So to go over once more how these different dimensions of wellness will be covered. The course is fundamentally going to be structured according to the 5 F's of the Daniel Plan. So it'll start off with this first week talking about a systems approach to mental health. Then we'll lay the foundations by talking about spirituality and sleep. Then we'll spend 2 weeks on food and nutrition. Then we'll cover nutrition, fitness. Then we'll cover what the Daniel Plan refers to as focus, which is essentially the mental and psychological components. So meditation, media, time use, and therapy. And then in the final week, we'll talk about friends as support and conclude. Finally, I just wanted to cover the final project, which is the capstone for the course. You'll be doing assignments to build toward this final project throughout the course. The final project has the following 3 major components. Number 1, media reviews. Number 2, a narrative and plan that satisfies the primary course objectives that we talked about earlier. First, this includes narrating your life and the causes that you've seen of the condition which you have. Then talking about the coping strategies that you've used to date. Then the coping strategies that you will adopt. This is where you'll update and integrate the self-care plans that you've made for each of the components that we talk about in each prior week of the course. Then accountability structures you're putting in place for yourself, and finally how you'll replicate this for others. The final section of the project then will be the self-evaluation course feedback, where you talk about how it was to go through the course for you, and you give feedback into how the course can be improved for the future. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching.